And yeah, so that's where all sin started. It's basically where our bodies were formed from. Because from Adam and Eve, God made a genetic traits, genetic codes. That's who we were, written in the genetic code. Genetic codes are written on our proteins. Proteins are the building blocks of tissue and who we see, formed from atoms. But the atoms are the smallest building blocks that we have. And each atom is commanded what to do from these genetic codes. So that's how everything's built in a man. Now you can get into a whole scientific discussion about all this, but that's immaterial. That's not what we're talking about here today. The truth, what I'm discussing here is why we can't hear the truth. Why can't we know God? Why don't people understand who God is? Well, it's because of these sins that Adam and Eve started. Actually, God started it. He was the one who made Adam and Eve. So He's the start of all this deception. Now, God can take the blame because, He's the creator. If any corporation makes a product that's bad and causes accidents and stuff like that, the corporation is to blame. And so God is the creator. He's the maker of us. He put these sins in us to make a delusion, to create a delusion, so that He could find His people that He formed in the flesh that would speak for Him. They were created as the Word in the beginning to speak for God, and that's who I am. I became one of these. I became the Word almost 2 years ago now, on June 14th, 2008. And I'll get into that a little bit later about how that happened. But I no longer have deception in me. Why not? Because my sins were removed over the course of 29 years. And once my sins were removed, or genetically altered so that I don't have them anymore, now I'm able to hear God through the Word without any deception. So I'm nothing special. It's just now I can understand who I am and who God is. And I understand the thoughts that I get from Him. And I can speak them now. And that's what happened to all the saints and Jesus. Jesus was the first one, the first man to experience this sin-free, sinless existence and be able to speak for God. Now he didn't get that ability right away. God didn't open up this path, this information to him until he was in his 30s, so he could start preaching the gospel. But before that, he wasn't thinking with deception. He knew who God was. He knew who He was. That's the part. He didn't know exactly who He was yet. God kept that from him until he got this understanding from God. Now, so this delusion was important to keep everybody from understanding this process of the saints, Jesus and the prophets speaking the word. If everybody would have been free to understand God How would he picked out his certain people to be in the government to rule in the next age? There would have been a lot of, it would have been chaos again. It was better to delude everybody and then just pick out all these people without them really understanding what was going on. And that's why you're deceived. So he could get these prophets, Jesus, and us saints found in the flesh, put the word in them, or at least speak through them as he did in the prophets, and let them know who they are in this age, and that they could speak for God and prepare them for the next age, before they perish in the flesh. Well, the deception, the sins of the people, is what killed most of the prophets, Jesus, and the saints. They couldn't handle the truth. They didn't understand it. They feared it. And, they killed them. They killed the flesh. Well, this was all planned out. This is what God wanted. He wanted these guys killed in the flesh. Because he used each individual to find the certain people he needed, and then this person would die, and of course they still live. The word lives on forever, eternity, and so does everybody else. Now, let's go into the rest of the creation, the rest of the people, what we call sinners. What's going to happen to them? Well, they're deceived, and they will be until they die in the flesh. And but that's no problem, because you're made to live forever. So once you die in the flesh, you're still exist in God. And so in the Bible they say you're forgiven. Well, yeah, you are, because you no longer have the flesh of sins. That's what was causing you to be deceived in the first place. So once you die, you don't have to worry ever again about having these sins. They're totally forgiven. There's nothing left of you anyway, except your image, your thoughts. And they'll get a new formed flesh in paradise. I call it paradise because it's a nice name. We can call it the new earth if you want. Call it anything you want. The new existence, the afterlife, whatever you want to call it. But I like to use paradise. That's great. That's a nice sounding. Because you know what? It is a paradise. I have lots of visions of it. I understand it. I know what's going to happen. And it's a wonderful place. I'll stop here.